if that's a Christian, I don't want to be a Christian. Astrology was the first thing I started getting into. I got into Buddhism, I got into like Taoism. I started studying all these religions. I had this book. I later found out there was only 4 of these books in the world. It was probably like the most serious book on spells and magic from the Kabbalah I've ever found. I've studied most of the religions except for Islam. And so I was just like, let's just go buy a Quran and check it out. It was a couple days after I picked up that Quran that I saw the entity.
Hello and welcome back to the Almost False podcast, where I interview regular people with incredible stories. Today's guest is someone who has had quite the spiritual search, jumping from Christianity to Judaism to New Age, making stops on Buddhism, Taoism, Islam, and many more. He has studied practically every major religion of the world, and his experience led him to discover the true driving force of the universe. His name is Matt, and he shared with me his whole life story, as well as the secrets that he has uncovered along his spiritual journey.
Just witnessing, how angry my father got, the abuse, me getting physically abused and his anger bouts, seeing that with my mom, seeing my father cheat on my mom, and then like I was with my mom when, we'd catch him cheating because he'd take out his boat. In the river that ran through downtown Portland, we were all just watching him party on this boat. I'm like 8. So I watched my dad do a lot of things I didn't agree with and just make my mom so sad, and then, make us very sad. And so I threw away all beliefs in God at one point. I just remember thinking in my head, if that's a Christian, my father, if that's a Christian, I don't want to be a Christian. I want nothing to do with Christianity. And so in high school, I kind of tossed everything God away. But at the same time, all my friends were, Jewish. It was just weird how I just naturally attracted all these Jewish friends. And so I always had this like constant reminder of God. But yeah, going through high school, I was just concentrated on my on school, and evolution and whatever the teachers are saying, and throughout high school I really lost my religion and my God.
It's very interesting because it's two different phenomena that usually happen in many people that happened at the same time for you. It was you seeing your father act not as a Christian, as a hypocrite, kind of, that made you not want to be a Christian, kind of hate Christianity. But at the same time, it was also school driving you away from religion, which happens with many, many, many kids. So those two things kind of came together. You left God, but you still were interested in the spiritual world. And now as we move a little bit forward, you got engaged, you got a fiance, and that's when I would say your search into religion, into spirituality began. What happened with your fiance for you to start being interested in these more esoteric things?
So I had naturally started searching spiritually right around the senior year, and just very light, kind of getting to like Aztec, like Toltec astrology stuff, and then being like, okay, and then getting into other forms of spiritualism, looking at what's it called, your sun signs, your moon signs, astrology was the first thing I started getting into. And when I met my fiance, she was already pretty down the road in her spiritual studies. She was in astrology. She was into a lot of esoteric and new age stuff. But when I first met her, I guess she'd already been playing with this thing for a while. But she, one of our first dates, I remember we played with a Ouija board. And that was really eye-opening to me, because at the time I'm just doing my school studies, atheist, evolution, and this Ouija board, man, the way it moved and the things it would say was very eye-opening. And I remember after that Ouija board experience. I was like, oh, okay, like, spirits are real, probably. And then meeting up with her, we, she was really into astrology, like really into it. And we just kind of walked down this new road of this new religion, new age stuff. This is probably like, 20 years ago. And yeah, so when we moved in together, there was definitely a spirit attached to her. Within and the spirit didn't like me dating her. The spirit was really trying to scare me away, and she would have night terrors. The door poltergeist type of activity. The door would open and close. After a while, I would eventually start waking up and seeing the entity that she would see, but it was always like a dark cloud. And that was kind of like my start into spiritual warfare, because all I knew is that the spirits are real. I don't know if they're good or bad. I just met this new fiance, and this spirit doesn't want me being with her, So, and then it just kind of took off from there. Met her side of the family. Her side of the family were self-proclaimed witches from Poland, so that ancient folk magic stuff. So, got a little taste of that. Her grandmother, yeah, called herself a witch, would try and curse my food because she hated every boyfriend that her granddaughter would bring her. And so, at the time I'm just like, what are these root cuttings in my oatmeal, And then also meeting her grandmother also kind of introduced me to demonic possession. It was something else. She would literally have, a glass of wine. She was an alcoholic. I guess she'd struggled with that for a long time. Yeah, she would literally have a drink, and immediately something would come in her and start speaking through her, possessing her. And she would start, saying really mean stuff, really personal things that only a demon would know, And at one point, it got so bad, her screaming, and she's elderly, we had gone. I was in her room. My fiance's like room at her grandma's house. She always had a room there, I guess. And her grandmother was going off from just the demonic possession, just screaming and Polish and all that. And I hadn't done this in a long time. I just started praying to God, And the second I started praying quietly, in front of my fiance, her demon from rooms away would be like, screaming like, "Oh, you think you can pray?" Like stuff like that. So it was eye-opening dealing with her. And then so at the same time, when we were dating, my family did not approve of my fiance because she did not come from wealth and money. They thought she was trying to get at my family's wealth, And so we just became isolated and alone. So I really cleaved to her side of the family, and come to find out that her side of the family is a bunch of witches.
Okay. So we talked about your roots in Judaism and Christianity with your dad, so both your parents.
Yep.
And then you became an atheist, and now you meet this fiance who's a witch, and her family are witches. So you got Judaism, Christianity, witchcraft. At that point, what did you believe in?
So I started studying every religion at that point. I was like, okay, I got into Buddhism. I got into like Taoism. I studied a little bit of Hinduism, but I never really liked it. I got into man, what's that religion called in Japan? It's like a nature religion.
I forget, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so I started studying all these religions, and just came back to Judaism on account of Kabbalah. I was just really fascinated with mysticism. So anything that was labeled mysticism or mystical, or that mystical section of the bookstore. That was basically my religion. And then one day I found some books on the Kabbalah, and I was like, what? Like, this is Jewish mysticism? Okay, I'm all about this. And so I really cleave to Kabbalah in Kabbalah. You can edit that out. It's called Kabbalah, but really cleave to that just because of my Jewish background, and what it was saying really made a lot of sense to me. It was like a perfect blend of all the mystical stuff that was going on and kind of surging in popularity, like I guess astrology and the stuff with the little red bracelet that wards off the evil eye that you see around. That all comes from the Kabbalah. And so I thought I had found like the start of it all, like the root of it all. And so I thought I found the truth with Kabbalah.
Okay, just to clarify, Kabbalah is not Judaism. It's some kind of Jewish magic sect kind of thing. For people that are not aware and don't know what it is, can you explain just briefly the difference between Judaism and the Kabbalah?
So it's really entrenched these days. You can't. I'd say most of every rabbi that's teaching at an Orthodox synagogue is also teaching Kabbalah on the side. And Kabbalah, it started out with trying to recreate Ezekiel's vision. That's where it all started. These rabbis were trying to, after Ezekiel left there, or Elijah, they tried recreating the vision of the chariots of God. And so they do these meditations, and then it just kind of took off from there. And so Kabbalah has there's just one side of its meditation. It seems very very all right. It's just meditating on the names of God, calling on the angels. And then there's another dark side to it where it's really ritualistic. It's very kind of magical. And my estimation of the darker side of it is from the Babylonian exile, after the Second Temple was destroyed. The Jewish people were exiled, and you have the Babylonian Talmud that comes from that, and then my estimation is all this darker kind of magical stuff. But that stuff was kind of secretive. You really had to dig to find that really dark stuff, At the time, I didn't know it was dark. It kind of felt wrong, but yeah. So it's a big mashup of all these different mystical practices, and it involves a lot of amulet use, like taking little metal geometric patterns and engraving, your Hebrew letters and intentions and stuff, and then wearing these amulets secretly. Just a lot of idolatry.
It's very different from what Judaism is supposed to be in the Old Testament. But I find it interesting that you said, at least in your experience, most rabbis that teach in synagogues are kind of doing that on the side, kind of entrenched. I would not be able to tell you because I've never been in a synagogue, but it seems to be your experience, which is at the very least interesting. But when you got into Kabbalah and these more darker practices, you were interested in magic, but you still weren't sure that it was real. That changed very drastically. Can you explain what happened for you to change your mind on magic?
So what I first started noticing is that when I would journal, things would come to pass. And my journalings back then were not nice, So I had ran into trouble with some of my friends. These two individuals were stealing at this place I was staying at. And, no one could pin it on them. Everyone's kept having stuff come up missing, but we all had our suspicions. I had my suspicions. And I had just kind of started getting very curious. The thing is, when you start these this new age, this mystical stuff, it all leads to the same place. It's just how quick are you going to get there? And so right at that time, I had just discovered sigils, and kind of more serious, intentional, doing your will above everything else type of magic. And I started finding and researching these sigils. We had some thieves afoot, and I secretly drew out some sigils. The ones that were intended for harm, and the ones that were intended for thieves, or a mystery, whatever the label was. And so I had drawn these out, traced them, and putting all my intentions into it, kind of going into like a meditative, hateful, intentional trance or something while I drew this. And then I did this secretly. I think I told one friend, he was kind of like my witness to this. I was like, here's what I'm going to do, dude. And it was kind of a test too. I was curious. I didn't know if it was going to work, but I had drawn these sigils, and I placed them in these two individual shoes right under the sole. And immediately one of them started hallucinating. Like within 2 to 5 minutes, he started hallucinating. And, he started hallucinating cobwebs every time he went in and out of the room, like he just like, what is that, And my friend who knew what I did, he just looked over at me, and I was like, whoa, that's real. And so he went through this period of time for like an hour or two where he was just hallucinating cobwebs and this guy that was following me around and like looking at him and staring at him.
Wait, I don't want to miss that, because you said he was seeing this guy that was following you around. What do you mean? He was seeing somebody that wasn't there?
So he would he would just be doing his thing. I'd come back into the room, I'd come into the room he was in, and he'd look at me, and with just total fear, and he would just be like, in front of everyone too. He'd just be like, "Who's that old guy that's with you, man? Who is that?" And
But it was just you, not with other people.
no, the thing is, we were all young at that time. I think we're all in our early 20s. There's not a single old guy there. But yeah.
And what about the other friend because it was two people that you put sigils. One started hallucinating. What happened with the other one?
Yeah, the other one, man, I think I put like a more harmful sigil in there, but he the next day or 2 days later he died from a drug overdose. And so that really really made me fearful, and just shocked me. I stopped doing anything like that after that. I never messed with the sigil ever again. Never. I knew black magic was real, and I knew that it can be very bad and harmful. And I felt like I opened Pandora's box, and I felt really responsible for that. And I never did anything like that again.
So you figured out that magic was real. You weren't sure. Now, to you, there was no doubt. And you said you kind of went away from the darker practices. I don't think you threw everything New Age out. It was just the darker things, the sigils and stuff, right?
Yep, I would still journal, and I still kept crystals. I still always had this little red bracelet around my wrist to ward off the evil eye, and I would just pray, because at the same time I'm still praying to God, because this is, I'm kind of came back to Judaism through this. So yeah, I threw everything evil and intentional away, shelved it.
So after this incident, you became more closer to Orthodox Judaism, not necessarily Orthodox, but went away from more of the mysticism, mystical stuff, became more of a traditional Jew, what people would consider Jewish in today's society. Why did you make the switch there, and how did that kind of work?
I just I really stopped looking at, man, I had this book. I later found out there was only 4 of these books in the world. but it was probably like the most serious book on spells and magic from the Kabbalah I've ever found. And the spelling of it was Kabbalah, not with a K but with a Q,
Okay.
And so I basically shelved that book, and I'm like, I'm not touching that book. And I just got into just reading the Tanakh and studying. The only book I'd studied from the Kabbalah was like the Zohar, and the Zohar was just kind of just more of like thinking of like how what's the real meaning behind the story of Jonah. I just started getting back into my Bible and started getting back into the Shabbat and started getting back into work, life, and trying to pick up the pieces from a failed engagement and a failed relationship and all those really intense spiritual encounters that I had and the guilt of what I did with black magic.
Hey, it's me, and I'm sorry for interrupting this amazing story, but I just wanted to remind you that we have extra content on Locals that you should check out, like the beginning of this conversation or the after show, which talks about the takeaways and practical applications of the testimonies. Go to almostfalse.locals.com or download the Locals app to get free access, unless you want to be missing out. Anyway, the links are in the description. Now, let's get back to the story. Okay, so let's recap everything. You grew up with a Messianic or Jewish mom, a Christian it was professing Christian dad. So there was the two faiths intermingled. Then you met your ex-fiance, which was into witchcraft. That got you into the New Age. You studied Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, other religions. And then you came back to Orthodox Judaism. Actually, came back is not necessarily accurate because you were never Orthodox to begin with. So that was a new faith as well. And for 10 years, that stayed pretty stable. You talked about your work. You were kind of just living a normal life. But that all changed once you bought a Quran. What happened?
I was feeling pretty empty. I just, I kept thinking, okay, if I get back into this, I'll be happy. If I just double down into my job and just be the perfect corporate robot, I'll be happy. If I just really get it back into fishing, I'll be happy. If I could just get, 500 likes on Instagram, I'll be happy. All these different avenues of happiness. And I kind of bottomed out. And I was just like, what more is there to life? Kind of got all those goals and was just not happy. And so, I guess every time I kind of bottomed out with a walk of life, I would just pick up some new spiritual book, and I was just like, I'm not picking up anything occult or mystical anymore. I have not studied. I've studied most of the religions except for Islam. So I was like, what's the big deal? It's I always try something and read about something before I make a judgment on it. And so I was just like, let's just go buy a Quran and check it out. And from the moment I picked up that Quran, it was speaking to me. It was, it was kind of I was kind of getting the same connection with it that I was getting with my Tanakh, Old Testament. And so I thought that was really strange right off the bat. And right at that same time that I went and picked up that Quran also, it was like someone hit a light switch. Someone hit a light switch and just made my life really dark and tough. We were going through COVID. People at work were, we were struggling with trying to wear masks and work a really hard job. And people were quitting and we were low staffed and people were freaking out. And everyone was just acting so mean to me. Everyone at work was acting so dark. My family was just acting so dark and distant. And it was like I was pushed into a corner. And then so I just went out and picked up this Quran. And so at the same time I picked up this Quran, I start feeling this pull to use magic again. I started feeling pulled to use magic. I never threw away all my like magical books or anything like secret. Like I still had like these books from a Masonic lodge, and I still had all this stuff on a shelf just collecting dust. And so at the time I picked up that Quran, I just started feeling a pull to use magic again, and like protect myself from all the evilness I was receiving from those around me. And I wasn't a good guy at the time until I found Jesus, but I still thought I was a good guy, and I prided myself in always going out of my way to make someone feel good, and make someone feel comfortable. And so I was just shocked when I was receiving all this negative repercussions, and so yeah, I picked up the Quran, started feeling pulled to use magic again. The Quran speaking to me, and I think it was the next night or 2 nights later is when I first saw the entity. In Hebrew, in Judaism we call them shadim. You call them devils, fallen angels, whatever you want to call them. It was a couple days after I picked up that Quran that I saw the entity. So I'm pretty tall, and this thing was looking at me dead in the eyes from about 20 feet away. And it was just a staring contest. What I saw was about a 5 to 6 foot tall owl with a big round face, ram's like curly horns, like a shofar, like a ram's horn, big curly horns. So a big horned owl with 4 wings and 3 claws staring at me. And man, I instinctively knew what I was looking at. I was just like, oh, okay, this is a demon. Even though in my head I had a completely different picture of what a demon was. I thought a demon looked like a featherless eagle. And a bunch of rabbis written in these little kind of secretive Kabbalistic books they had all kind of came to the same conclusion. I was like, oh, that makes sense. A featherless eagle, it makes sense. But what I was looking at was a giant horned owl. And so I started running through all the Hebrew names of God. I was just like, in Elohim's name be gone, in El Shaddai's name be gone, and then the unutterable word, in Yod Hey Vav Hey's name be gone, and it did not leave, and that made me scared. That made me really scared, and I hadn't really thought about Jesus in a long time. And in that moment, I got this notion to use Jesus's name, and so as a last-ditch effort, I used in Jesus Christ's name be gone, and it disappeared. And then after that, every night they came by, and that started encounters every night with them.
Wow. You have quite a story. And I imagine that you never thought to see these things to see this thing in the first place, like you explained, that's not what you thought a demon looked like, and you definitely did not expect it to go away in the name of Jesus. But you were, found with this new reality that the name of Jesus had power. How did that impact you personally?
So, right when I saw that demon leave, after using the name Jesus Christ, I became a believer, and in that moment, I had received the Holy Spirit. In that moment, all these connections, just kind of all these questions and answers that I had, just all came together like a puzzle piece. And for example, I for a long time thought the devil was just the garbage man, just some guy that has a terrible job. He's just doing his job, and why all the hatred? He's just balancing everything out, doing his job. He's the garbage man. And in that moment, when I believed on the name of Jesus, I knew. I was just like, oh, it is a battle. Oh, this guy is trying to kill you. He is. He's not just doing a job. It's an actual battle with this guy. And so, amongst a lot of other things that I realized in that moment and during that night, I don't think I slept that night, and I was just praying to Jesus and being like, I'm so sorry. You are real. You did die for our sins. And just getting all these revelations and just all these puzzle pieces and all these questions were just being answered. Yeah, but then the enemy did not want me to keep it because the encounters increased every night after that.
Yes, and we're going to talk in detail about everything that happened to you because there's a lot, and I know people want to know about it. So definitely, we're going to talk about it. But I just want to wrap up for now your story with Jesus, this first encounter. You studied pretty much every religion. We talked about almost a dozen of them already in this show, and you were always searching for truth. There's a lot of people that are on that path, that are looking for truth, that are looking for the right religion. If you had something to say to them, what would it be?
I would tell them to don't give up. Don't let your inner child die. Keep finding the faith to continue your search. And I'm here to say I've bottomed out on my search for answers, and Jesus is the only way. All the other religions and all the other mystical ideas, practices, it's all just doctrines of demons. These demons are, I don't like to give them too much credit, but they definitely are smart at what they do when they're allowed to do it. And all these other religions are basically doctrines of demons to mislead the masses. And I would say just use the name Jesus Christ, pray on it, and see the power that's in there. See the word and the name Jesus work in your life, and try it out.
Thank you for watching this interview with Matt, but if you thought this was over, you'd be very wrong. As he alluded to in the interview, Matt's conversion to Christianity opened him up to the spirit realm in a way that I've never heard before, having encounters with fallen angels, UFOs, and Bigfoots. That whole interview is available for free on Locals. You can check it out by clicking the link in the description or going directly to almostfalse.locals.com. I hope to see you there. Stay blessed.